Had Lucy been the subject of a court order, the police would have been alerted and a missing person bulletin put out. But there was no court order, only a concern of neglect, the level of which hadn't merited the measure of applying to the court for an emergency protection order. It's true that the social services could have applied for a court order after Bonnie had gone, but they didn't, presumably for the same reason one hadn't been applied for before, that though Lucy had been neglected, she wasn't, as yet, at risk of significant harm, the threshold that needed to be reached before the social services applied for a care order. Had they done so, the police would have been alerted, resulting in a better chance of finding Bonnie and Lucy would have been taken into care. With no court order and no verifiable details of Bonnie that might have helped trace her, it is likely their case stayed open at the social services for a few months, while Doris checked with Maggie and local agencies to see if anyone had heard from Bonnie before being filed away until such time as Bonnie and Lucy reappeared. It's on record that Maggie told Doris she'd telephoned her sister a couple of times during this period to see if she'd heard from Bonnie, but she hadn't, and Maggie said her sister was so immersed in her own problems that she had little interest in what her daughter and granddaughter were doing or even in whether they were safe. With no evidence to go on, it's impossible to know of the life Bonnie and Lucy led during the next 14 months while they were missing, but one can guess. Living underground, away from the attention of the authorities, relies on a hand-to-mouth existence, funded by cash-in-hand jobs if you're lucky, but more likely borrowing, begging, stealing, prostitution, and sleeping wherever you can. In doorways, under bridges, in squats, on someone's floor, in cheap bed and breakfasts, or in beds with no breakfast. It would have been even more difficult with a baby, but unregistered, unregulated, and unscrupulous landlords can be found down the back streets of any big city, their clientele hearing of their location by word of mouth. These landlords cram as many mattresses into a room as it'll hold, and charge only a few pounds for the night. They are always full, not only with runaways, but the short and long-term homeless, drug addicts, alcoholics, those with mental health problems and criminals wanted by the police, of all ages and both sexes. Such places are health hazards and are often responsible for passing on infections, for example tuberculosis. With no fire escapes, they can also be death traps. But if you're avoiding the authorities, as Bonnie was, you are unable to obtain benefit money without risk of being discovered. When Bonnie and Lucy reappeared 14 months later, it was in the accident and emergency department of a hospital 2 counties away. It was a Friday afternoon, and they were both suffering from highly inflamed rashes that covered large areas of their bodies. They were diagnosed as having scabies. Scabies is caused by parasites burrowing under the skin and laying their eggs. It is most commonly found in those living in overcrowded conditions with poor hygiene. The irritation caused by the infestation is unbearable, and most sufferers go to their doctor in the early stages of the disease. The doctor at the hospital noted that these cases were very severe, especially in the child, and had clearly been left untreated for some time, causing the child a lot of distress. The doctor prescribed a lotion, which had to be applied after a bath from the neck down to the toes, left on overnight and then washed off. He explained to Bonnie that a second treatment would be needed a week after the first, and told her to go to her own doctor to get the prescription for it, and also to have their condition checked. He was concerned that some of the child's sores were becoming infected, so he also prescribed an antibiotic cream. He explained that scabies was highly contagious, and all clothing, bedding, and towels used by them must be washed in very hot water and dried in a hot dryer to prevent another infestation. When registering at the hospital, Bonnie had given her address as the flat she'd lived in near her Aunt Maggie, and her doctor as the one she'd seen when she'd first arrived at Maggie's. It is unknown if Bonnie took Lucy to a doctor for a follow-up appointment. She certainly didn't go to that doctor. Bonnie and Lucy then disappeared again, and reappeared when Lucy was nearly 3 years old. Bonnie was now living with a man in his 30s called Freddie, and using his surname for her and Lucy. She registered Lucy at a nursery so she could start just after her 3rd birthday, and 2 nursery teachers made a home visit prior to Lucy starting. These home visits are normal practice in England.